Lasky on the left shoulder. A brief delay on the northbound Veterans Memorial, 63rd at the Reagan Tollway. I'm Jim Talamonte on AM 560 The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next in our 1-hour heating and air conditioning weather center. A chilly day ahead. Clouds and sunshine, a high of 31, 16 overnight, 39 tomorrow, and 57 on Sunday. 18 at O'Hare. Next news coming up at 8. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560, The Answer, online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.com.
About what's going on in Madison, Wisconsin, that much more interesting. Miss Ben Shalom speaking out against the indoctrination of children by the trans community, quote unquote. She championed the cause of parents in Madison who are suing the local school district over the issue. It's time to put a stop to the sort of indoctrination of children by the trans community, big pharma, and big medicine. As a teacher of 37 years, I wonder what goes on in the mind of a man who thinks that because he goes about in woman face, that gives him the right to force his system of beliefs on young children. This isn't what teachers are supposed to do, is it? Oh, boy. Miriam Ben Shalom has now been canceled. She'll never be allowed to talk again. For more on this topic of trans, we're pleased to be joined by Libby Emmons, contributor Spectator USA, Quillette, and the American Conservative. She has written much on this topic, and she has more offerings, as do we, more offerings in legislative form to discuss. Libby, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Miriam Ben Shalom, lesbian, self-described radical feminist. I mean, can't we all just get along? What is going on here?
Well, I think a lot of the problem has to do with as she's concerned about the indoctrination of children in this ideology. For most people who give thought to, trans people or trans ideology, the idea is that what adults do and how they want to present themselves is their business, as it is for all of us. But when it comes to these ideas being perpetrated in education during children's formative years of development, it's just really absurd to think that an educator should be telling a child not to trust their own bodies as reality, not to believe that their bodies are an innate part of the fabric of reality. And I think that's where a lot of people who have jumped on board with opposition to trans ideology in the past few years have come down on it.
And what are we to say about parents, high-profile ones, use them as an example, like Charlize Theron or Dwayne Wade, who say we should celebrate a prepubescent child identifying as different than their biological gender, and if he or she wants to have surgery to codify the gender to which they identify, then that's what we should do.
I think there's a few things to say about that. Some of these kids probably would have been gay. And we had a massive movement at the end of the 20th century into the 21st about how it should be socially acceptable to be gay. We passed, gay marriage is legal now. So I think that's one thing. It's kind of like, why can't your kid just be gay? Why does the child have to be cured of their homosexuality by changing their bodies to reflect something else? Another thing is that putting these kids in the public eye, I think, does the kid a disservice because it assumes that this child is going to be hard and fast to this new identity and this new ideology and that they're never going to want to turn back on it. I have a friend who has a child who is trans and has been prescribed testosterone. And, the child was using the testosterone and everything, and she kept forgetting to use it. And so my friend was like, then I was reminding her to use it. And I was like, no, don't remind her. If she doesn't want to use it, she won't. And if she does want to use it, she'll remember to do it. but let her have this door out. Don't make this identity be a wall between her and everything else. We don't need to pack them into this box and just say, okay, you live in this box now. It's very hard we all know it's very hard to walk something back once you've been wrong. No one wants to do that. Hey, I was totally wrong. I'm not really a boy. I'm actually a girl. If you're public with the transition of your child, then your child has to be public when they detransition. And I think it should be a lot easier to let kids turn around on that and get out of this thing once they've gotten involved in it if they don't want it.
Well, and
I think that's the problem. Yeah.
And to your point, the research into outcomes. Remember that outcomes? We're supposed to be concerned about outcomes for patients, right? The research into this suggests that there are a lot of people that are wildly unhappy to the point of suicidal after having done
mutilating their bodies,
a transition, after having done a surgical transition. That that wasn't what was wrong with them. That wasn't the challenge that they were really dealing with. It was a mental issue, a gender dysphoria issue, and the cure turns out to be worse than the ailment.
Yeah, and it's not a cure. Like, trans surgery is not a cure, and you've had plenty of people who have undergone trans surgery coming out and saying, like, my dysphoria persisted. As you said, I was still suicidal. And it could be that, the only thing wrong with people is that we don't value life, we don't value ourselves, we don't value humanity. We think that human beings are the problem with the world, as opposed to, like, the world is our gift. We have this, we have to take care of it, but we also have to take care of ourselves. There's this whole environmentalism, which, I'm on board with a lot of environmentalist ideas, but why is it that the one thing in nature that we decry as a problem is ourselves? Why is everything in nature terrific except for human beings?
And we're just
shoving, part of that.
Yeah, but I feel like we're just shoving this down kids' throats so that they have to, have like a coming out party or I'm really a boy, but I was born a girl. I mean, when we were kids, we had a lot of tomboys. I was a tomboy. I wanted to be a boy. I would never wear a dress. I wanted to play baseball. I didn't think it was fair that we didn't have women's baseball, blah, blah, blah. Young little feminist, I guess. But nowadays, if I felt like that, now they would probably give me surgery, give me testosterone.
There's been a lot of women who say that exact same thing. I played with my brother's trucks or whatever. I mean, I didn't, but that's because my brother was 12 years younger than me. I would have had I had access to his trucks, but I didn't. I think part of that, too, what you say about all the kids coming out is that we don't have rites of passage anymore in our society. When I was a kid, there were religious traditions that I was going along with. When I was of the age that a lot of kids would be coming out, I had my confirmation at my church. I was preparing for that. And a lot of religious traditions have big rites of passage around the age of 13 all over the world. So I think that's a thing, too. Like, what are we telling kids that growing up is? We're telling them that it's coming out. And I think that with parents, you mentioned Charlize Theron, Dwayne Wade, and Gabrielle Union. These are obviously very caring, attentive parents who just want to do the best thing for their kids. And for some reason, they think that medical intervention in their children's healthy bodies is the best thing to do, and to be super public about it. And they're public about it. Why? Because they want to create a safe society for their trans child to live in. But if it were me, I was talking to another friend whose daughter is presenting, with like gender dysphoria stuff at age 10. And he was like, what should I do? And I was like, pull her out of school, move to the woods, get her chopping wood, start doing something so that survival becomes the primary goal, not starving or whatever, what I'm saying, like start taking care of your own self, and so that you're not dealing with all of this other stuff that is pretty irrelevant to actual life,
just continuing on in terms of how this is presenting itself around the country. California legislation has been introduced that would require all retail department stores with 500 or more employees to do away with boys' aisles and girls' aisles that require children's products to be offered in a single and require children's products to be offered in a single gender-neutral section, because girls shouldn't have to search for jock straps and cups any more than boys.
Yeah, I think that this is a problem we've invented for ourselves. When I was a kid, we just had toys, and it wasn't like there was a pink aisle and a blue aisle. But then what happened is you had advertisers coming on board. You had complaints about how toys weren't inclusive enough. So the next thing you know, we have pink trucks and we have like Legos for girls specifically and all this stuff. I don't remember ever feeling like there were toys I couldn't have access to because I was a girl instead of a boy. They were just all toys. And they were in primary colors. There wasn't a ton of pink toys. There wasn't a ton of blue toys. So this is a problem we created for ourselves out of a desire to be more inclusive. And it turns out that, dividing everybody up and putting them into boxes is not inclusive, but a divisive action. So we're like reversing something that didn't need to be reversed in the first place and isn't a problem. You know what I'm saying? It's ridiculous. Like, how about we just put all the clothes on one rack?
Absolutely.
Oh, that's what they want to do.
Absolutely
Because you have
should.
a boys section for clothes and a girls section for clothes, and they want to get rid of those.
Right.
Because
it's not like their bodies are different or that clothes.
That's going to make it
boys'
hardest
bodies
for
and
moms
girls'
who need to
bodies
shop
different.
for their kids.
Right, which is already so
It's already,
annoying.
I hate it.
Yeah, I'm working on that.
It's always interesting to me when people want to prevent research from being disclosed publicly. It's always interesting to me when people don't want to present evidence to support their argument or have no evidence to support their argument. And so one example of this is the research that was done at Brown University about trans as significantly a social contagion.
Right.
That was suppressed. And now we have, and you wrote about this, research the Canadian government promised to provide about hate speech against people based on their gender identity, and they won't provide it. Why is that?
That's right. Yeah, well, in Canada with Bill C-16, the idea is that when Trudeau came to office, he promised that any legislation before it went through would be accompanied by this gender analysis, a GBA, a gender bias, and I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, that's right.
But would be accompanied by this analysis. And everything has been accompanied by this analysis. But then Bill C-16 comes in, which is talking about extending protections to gender expression and gender identity, two things which don't actually have any real definitions. It was not accompanied by a GBA. And when it was discussed in Parliament, there were some representatives who said, hey, where's the GBA? And then they voted for it anyway. So a woman put together a petition to get the GBA, and it was denied. She was trying to get an MP to back it for a long time because that's how it works in Canada. If you want to have a petition before the House of Commons, you have to get an MP to authorize it. And she went after several MPs. She eventually sent out an email to every MP in Canada asking for someone to authorize her petition, and she got one positive reply. Everyone else was like, nope, we're not going to touch this at all. Within 24 hours, she had more than the necessary number of signatures to get this released, and it's still not going anywhere. She's filed the equivalent of the Freedom of Information Act request in Canada, and you get the sense that they either don't want to release it because they didn't do the report, or they don't want to release it because it shows that protections for gender identity and expression put women and children at risk. It's one of those two things.
Yeah, it turns out that the trans bien-pensant is greater than the need for transparency or evidence. That's what we see happening over and over again, it seems to me.
Yeah.
She is Libby Emmons, contributor to Spectator USA, Quillette, The American Conservative. Check out her pieces at both postmillennial.com, which I'll tweet out, as well as at thefederalist.com on this topic. Libby, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thanks. And she joined